Hi everyone, welcome to the Sip and Spin. I am the Tipsy Spinster, and on today's show we're going to talk about Mocktinis, magazines, and Merino. From some of the previous videos you've seen, I've been playing a lot with non-alcoholic cocktails, and I have to say, creating cocktails without alcohol is a lot more challenging than using alcohol, and one of the biggest reasons is because alcohol creates a certain complexity and almost, I don't want to say bitterness, but a dryness. And when you pull that out, what I was experiencing was I was getting a lot of fruity drinks that almost tasted like children's juice boxes. And that's not what a cocktail should be. A cocktail should be something that is sippable. And so I went back and I played with cocktails from the early 19th century. And one of them is called the Corpse Reviver. I tell you what, I don't know about reviving a corpse, but it nearly killed me because it was so incredibly strong. And I thought, that's way too far one direction, and the juice flavor is way too far the other direction. And so as I've been working through it, I think I've come up with a really nice blend. So what I'm drinking today, it's colorful. It's pink foam on the top, green is the base. I used Seedlip Grove 42 as my base, which gives me that kind of dry flavor. Matcha Powder lemonade, and then on the top I have infused egg white with pink lemonade and maraschino cherry juice. And I think I'm pretty darn close to creating something that is sippable and not gulpable. So for those of you that want to try making some of these mocktails, play with it, and please be sure to let me know how it goes down in the comments section. One of the first magazines that I want to talk about is Harper's Bazaar. This particular magazine is from February 1st, 1868, and it kind of ties in with my research on traditional cocktails as well. One of the things that I love about these old magazines, which comes in the form of a newspaper, there are actually early patterns for knit and crochet projects. This one has a pattern for a knitted corset, a lace scarf, and a fichu, which almost looks like a hap or a hapsaloo shawl, and that's one of the things that I'm going to be talking about a little bit later. Now, while these are rare, they're hard to find, more so than being rare. Harper's Bazaar was published all across the United States, and I've been able to find quite a few of them online and in antique shops. So I would encourage you to see if you can find one. They're fun reads. If you want more information on trying a vintage shawl, Franklin Hoggett created a knit-along for the month of February, which is why I pulled the February one. I thought it was appropriate. He created a vintage shawl knit-along, and he's got the pattern and everything. If you go to Franklin Hoggett's website, there are the direct links on how to get to it. It's a free pattern. The yarn that he chose for it is absolutely beautiful. I'm still working on mine. I'll post pictures of it when I get it done. The other magazines that I want to talk about, I realized when I went back and looked at my previous video comparing Spin-Off and Fly, I did a really crappy job of explaining them. So this is kind of like the Scooby-Doo do-over. Let's try this one more time. And I have notes to keep me humble. So Spin-Off is a magazine that is published by Interweave Press. The current editor is Anne Murrow. A 1-year, 4-issue subscription currently runs $19.50, and you can get the digital version as well, or both with the discount. It's easy to find. You can get it on any newsstand. It's a small size. And the nice thing, I guess the benefit with Spin-Off is it holds loosely to a theme. And I'll give you an example of that. In this particular issue, it is the equipment issue. Of the 11 articles in the issue, only 3 really focused on equipment. The other ones talked about how equipment was used by the writer and how it fueled different projects and things like that. Ply, on the other hand, which is the other one that I wanted to talk about, Ply is published and edited by J.C. Boggs Faulkner, who also has videos on Craftsy, and she also runs Ply Away, which is an annual spinning convention that happens each year in Kansas City. Again, you can check her out on her website as well. A 1-year, 4-issue subscription to Ply is $36. Yep, it's quite a bit more, but you kind of get a lot more. The cardstock or the paper stock that's used on this magazine is a lot thicker. It's much sturdier. It's more like a book than it is a magazine. And it is a very focused issue. So, for instance, they have the departments like regular features, spin it, prep it, extras, projects, community. The ads are also content specific. The articles are easy to read and they're very personable. When you work for a bit or write for a big company like Spinoff, they have very specific submission guidelines. Ply has submission guidelines as well, but I think they're a little bit better in terms of letting a writer's voice come through. For me personally, Ply as a magazine, as I read the articles, it's almost like the writers are speaking directly to me. It's not quite as technical, and I like the fact that each issue is focused on a specific theme. And then the last one that I want to talk about is Tiny Studio Creative Life. This is an internet only or digital. The editor is Susie Brown, who's done a number of pod and video casts. It is out of Australia. Ply and Spinoff are both US-based magazines. Tiny Studio Creative Life is out of Australia. It's $4.95 per month through patron subscription. And the bonus is, you're paying per month. I have no idea how many issues will be in a given year because it just started. We're only on issue 2. Here's the cool thing. That $4.95 a month not only gets you the magazine, but it also gets the videos that go along with it. So you're getting additional content. And one of the things that I really like about it is it's this amazing combination of spinning techniques and patterns as well as ways to craft mindfully. There's wheel reviews, yarn reviews, authors and projects, but it's really promoting a mindful crafting mindset, and it's encouraging as well. So I would say those are the magazines that I want you to, or I would recommend that you try out. And in just a second, I will continue with a couple other project ideas, and then I'm going to talk about Merino. Different kinds of fiber have been popping up a lot on Facebook pages and on my Instagram post as well, and Merino seems to be a hot topic right now. Merino is considered a fine fiber, which means it's got a pretty high micron, or it's a very fine, lightweight fiber, which means you can do a lot with it. In my opinion, Merino desperately wants nothing more than to be a piece of felt, because if you look at Merino in an angry way, it will felt. If you spend too much time touching it, it will felt. And quite possibly, it has become my nemesis fiber. I love it and I hate it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why I love it and why I hate it. So I was introduced to Merino because of a lovely little ewe lamb named Avocado. I was able to get Avocado's baby fleece, and I thought this was going to be the easiest processing ever. Merino is not easy to process because it wants to be a piece of felt. That's all it wants. It's like if it could be a yurt, it would be a yurt. I kid you not. So I was introduced to Avocado, and 4.5 pounds of fiber later, I think probably about 8 ounces of it is now part of my garden as mulch because I completely destroyed it during the processing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about baby fleece versus the next cutting, or the Hoggett Fleece. And the Hoggett Fleece is what is the second shearing on an animal. So this is Merino's baby, or this is Avocado's baby fleece. And it's incredibly fine. For merino being as fine a fiber as it is, it has an incredibly high lanolin content. So some things that you want to ask about when you're getting fleece is, one, is it the first cutting? Now, when lambs are weaned, there are a couple things that you want to ask. When lambs are weaned, there's usually always, could be, sometimes, typically, there's the possibility, there we go. When lambs are weaned, there's a possibility for a break in the fiber. So in this particular case, avocado was coated, which was wonderful. And the coating kind of, like I said, did I mention merino wants to be a piece of felt? Where the tips were coated, the fiber has started to felt a little bit. And so as you can see, those tips pop right off. And so there's that. Then, as I got in and started working with avocado's fleece, I realized that when she was weaned, the fiber had a break in it. And that's not uncommon. It doesn't mean that you can't use it. It just means that I was not, when I got done washing this fiber and processing it, I wasn't going to get the 3.5-inch staple that it originally came out at. And not all of it broke. Some of it was consistent, some of it wasn't. Here's the neat thing with babies. Avocado smells like a baby, and that's one of the things that I loved about her fleece. She smells like a baby, and I don't know how to describe it any other way than that. This is her second fleece. This is the fleece that I just got, so this is her second shearing. And she doesn't smell like a baby anymore. She smells like an adult sheep. And from what the breeder was saying, she's also expecting babies, so that's kind of exciting. So this is her second. Again, she's still coated. You can see the two different beautiful colors. Where it's coated, I've got that little bit of felted tip. Now here's the neat thing, and I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but her second fiber, her second cutting, her fleece is so strong, it twangs. It's amazing how strong it is. So that's kind of the benefit, and the tips don't pull off either. So I had to process her Hoggett fleece differently than her baby fleece. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I did that. And I'm going to demonstrate by showing you on the piece of fin that I completely destroyed. So, and I'm just going to briefly talk about this. My very first fleece was fin sheep. And basically, I took the fleece and I dumped it in hot water and I agitated it and I pulled it out and I squished all of the water out and I let it dry and then put bits of it through the drum carder, and I got a mess. I ended up with a piece of felt, pretty much. Did I mention Finn also would really, really like to be a piece of felt? Not so bad, but if you can get in and see, this is what happens when you don't process. You end up with these things called neps. And if you want to avoid that, Mary from Kamaj Fiber Arts just put together a wonderful video on how to avoid ending up with this. Because, yep, I could go through and try spinning this, but I would be pulling out all of these second cuts that I missed in the processing and all of these neps, and or I could spin it as a really thick yarn. What I did instead was I made a bunny. And if you want a video on how I created this little guy, let me know and I will post a video on how you can make bunnies from fiber that you overprocessed and nearly destroyed, because in my opinion, this is the only thing that this stuff is good for. I'm going to make a herd of Easter bunnies. So, talking about merino fleece, there are a couple different ways to process it, and you can process any fleece on a budget. Really, all you need is a flit carder, and you can even use the flit card dog brushes. I went to the dollar store and got a bucket, and if you're processing in small batches, all you need is a dollar store bucket, and I even found dollar store little baskets that are wonderful for storing the fiber. And when I dried it, I just set it on top and I used it as a drying rack. So for me to process all of Avocado's baby fleece, I've been doing it in batches, and it's cost me the price of the fleece, of course, 20 bucks, 30 bucks for a flip carder. I can't even remember how much this was. I think it was given to me actually, and $3 for baskets. So I've been doing it all pretty inexpensively. Soap is a different story. You can certainly use Dawn dishwashing liquid. There's also Namaste and Unicorn Power Scour. For Merino, I like Unicorn because it does the best job of cutting through the grease. And ultimately when you're scouring, that's the goal, is to remove the lanolin while still maintaining the integrity of the fiber. So in the case of Avocado and her baby fleece, I soaked it. I pulled some out and I just set it in and I let it soak overnight in cool water. It loosened up the debris. A lot of the dirt fell to the bottom. She was coated, so there was hardly any dirt at all. In fact, the ranch where I got Avocado's fleece from, I think they purposely just put in a piece of straw so they can say that it has some vegetable matter, because this fleece was pristine. There wasn't hardly anything in it. So I let it sit overnight, and then I gently took it out without squeezing it. I think the biggest mistake you make in processing is you want to squeeze all of the water out. For some reason, that's kind of our thing. We want to wring out the water because we want it to dry. And for a fleece that will felt in a heartbeat, you can't do that. So I just lifted it out. I put it in my salad spinner, which I don't use it for salad because lettuce is gross. So I spun the water out from my salad spinner. I set it, then I filled up the bucket with incredibly hot water, the scour. I let it soak, and I let it soak for hours in the scour. And you could see the lanolin on top of the water. And I let it soak until the water cooled, but didn't get completely cold. And then I rinsed it 3 or 4 times in that same temperature of water. Agitation, water changes, and friction will essentially felt your fiber, and that's what you want to avoid. So just the steps: soak, scour, rinse, and then spin dry, touching it as little as possible. And this is what I ended up with. And so this is Avocado's baby fleece that's been washed, and the lock integrity is still pretty much there, but you can see how even with very little agitation, here's my lock. And I didn't pull the tips off because I wanted you to see the difference between the washed fiber and the length in the unwashed. It shrinks with washing. And now this one I am going to pull the tip off. And so this is what I'm left with. It's quite a bit of a difference between the unwashed lock and the washed lock. And so what I did, I flick carded this, because this right here, this little bit right here, that's going to create a nip, and I don't want that. So I flick carded and put it through my drum carder, and this is what I came up with for the baby fleece. So this has gone through my drum carder, and I am spinning it as thread. So it's going to end up being a very fine lace weight. And then I will be doing the same thing. Now, Avocado's second fleece. And I haven't put this through the drum carder yet. I just wanted you to see the difference. We've got the two colors. She's got the smoky grays, and then she's got the darker grays in here as well. And now the second fleece, I left the tips on because I wanted to be able to see. Makes it a little bit easier when you go through the carding. Very little. I touched it as little as possible. And so now, again, it desired to shrink. But here's the cool thing. The tips are intact. So realistically, and I am going to put this through the drum carder, but all I would need to do is flip card, and then I could spin that. And when you look back at the original, it's almost the same. So while it's a great thing, I mean, it's fun getting a baby fleece, you definitely need to handle it a little bit differently. I'm so glad I was able to get Avocado's second fleece as well for the comparison. The biggest things I noticed, smell. The baby fleece smells like a baby, and the Hoggett, or the second shearing, she smells like a full-grown lamb now. Structure-wise, the Hoggett fleece is definitely stronger, but both are completely usable. In fact, I would say the second one is even softer than her baby fleece. So I'm so very glad that I had the opportunity to try both. But when you're buying fleeces, those are definitely things that you need to ask for. What shearing is it? Were the animals coated? You want to check, if you can, the strength of the locks, because breaks are what will cause some of those neps. And it's not that they're unusable, it just means that you're going to have to process a little bit more carefully. So that was my experience with Merino. I am still convinced that it would like nothing more than to be a piece of felt, and I'm trying very hard to not turn these fleeces into giant felt balls. So good luck, and I hope if you have the opportunity to work with Merino, you share your experiences. Thanks for tuning in, and happy spinning.